Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. In today's video, I'm going to be making this mini version of the gift bag which I made a couple of months ago. I'll just bring that one in to show you. I will link the video for this one up in the corner if you haven't seen it already. This one measures 6 inches across, it's 1.5 inches deep, and it's 3 inches high. The process is much the same as with the previous bag. Obviously all the measurements are scaled down. It's not a tricky project to put together, so let's get started. The starting cardstock is 6 inches by 7.5 inches, and I've added to it a piece of patterned paper which is 5 3/4 by 7 1/4. Once that's completely dry, along the long side score at 3 and 4.5. So this is the front, the base and the back of the bag. Next you'll need 2 pieces which are going to be for the sides, and these will be 3 inches by 3.5 inches. Along the 3.5 inch side score at 3 inches, rotate, and on the short side score at 1/2 and 2.5. Rotate back to the long side, and within the 1/2 inch sections at the top and the bottom, score down to the score line at 2 inch, flip the piece over and repeat. So your 1/2 inch sections down the side will have these markers. Rotate the piece back to the short side, and we're going to work on the section that's got the 1/2 inch section, and score down to the 1/2 inch line at 3/4 inch and 2.25 inches. So your piece will be this way up. You'll have a 1/2 inch score line here, a score line here, 2 marks here, score line at the bottom, and then 2 indicators here. You then want to join up the marks on the left and the right hand side with the marks at the bottom, and you can either do these as a straight line, or you can use something with a curve in it which will give a curve shape to the side of your bag. For instance, I'll just show you. This was the first bag that was made, the large bag, and you can see this has got a curved shape to it here. Alternatively, you can do, as I'm going to do for this particular bag, is just draw a straight line with your stylus, joining the left hand point up with the left hand bottom point here, and the right hand point with the bottom right hand point here, and that's going to give your bag more of this shape at the side. So they are the two looks side by side. So you can decide which route you want to go down. Once you've done that, fold and burnish along your score lines. Take your scissors. With the piece in this orientation, I'm going to cut up the 2 score lines within the base 1/2 inch tab like so. This is the tab which is going to glue the side into the base of the bag, and I'll just take a wedge off of those. Rotate the piece. I'm going to take a wedge off of this left hand end of the long glue tab like so, and then cut up the marker within the side glue tab, and then take a wedge. Rotate and do the same on the other side. So your piece will look like this, and you may have a curve here or you may have the straight edges. I'm going to just cut away this section here, and I'll do this regardless of which shape you've got, and this section here, and I'm going to trim this down to approximately 1/2 inch. If you've chosen to have the curve, what you would then want to do is cut yourself a series of teeth within the 1/2 inch section up to your curved score line. So you will create these side pieces the same way as the side pieces in the larger bag. Alternatively, if you're having the straight edge as I'm having, I'm going to just get rid of this point here and this point here, and fold and burnish along my straight score lines. If you've made any of the curved shaped boxes, that I've made before, you will know the process of creating the curve and creating the teeth within the tab to get the curved section of your bag. So that's your side section, and you'll do that twice. You then want to add on your pattern paper if you're going to have pattern paper, and I would suggest that you cut one and then use that as a template for the second piece. So my starting rectangle for my pattern paper was 1 3/4 times 2 3/4. I've then measured and marked down each of the sides, made a pencil mark at 1 7/8 of an inch. So there was a pencil mark here on the left at 1 7/8 and a pencil mark there at 1 7/8. I then rotated the piece and marked along the top edge at 1/4 of an inch from the left and 1/4 of an inch from the right, and I then cut away the section between the pencil mark here and the pencil mark at the bottom. Once you've got your shape, lay your piece on the side section and just make sure that you're happy with it. If you're happy with the look of this piece, then you can use this as a template for the second side. You then want to glue your pattern paper into place, and then once your piece is completely dry, sit the side section back in your scoreboard like so, and I have scored at the 1.5 mark down 1.5 inches. So that's this score line here, and that's going to give me a side which is going to come together like so. Now you can change the length of that, so you could have that longer if you wanted, you could have it shorter. So that's a personal choice as to how your side is going to look. So once your two sides are completed, the next thing you'll make is the front flap. Now the piece for the front flap will need to be 6 inches, and you will then need to determine how long or how far you want the flap to come over the front of the bag. If you've watched the large bag video, the construction is the same. So the flap is going to sit inside the back of the bag. If you know the gift that you're going to be putting in the bag, and maybe it's going to be a little bit taller than the 3 inches of the bag height, or you're going to need the full 1.5 inch width of the bag, you might want to make your flap longer, because you might want to take that into consideration as the flap comes over the front of the bag. I'll just show you on the larger bag just to demonstrate my thought process. You can see here that the bag comes completely together at the top, and so the flap is starting off from a very narrow point. If you knew that your bag needed to be open for your gift, you might want to make the flap longer so that you're taking that into account right from the beginning. Now, I know, for instance, that I'm not going to need the full width of the bag, so my cardstock is going to be 2.5 inches wide, so my flap element will be 2 inches long. So just have some consideration as to how wide your bag is going to be open, the height of the gift, because you can make allowances now when you create the flap. My starting piece is 2.5 inches by 6 inches, and I'm scoring on the short side at 1/2 inch. So this is the 1/2 inch glue tab, which is going to allow me to stick this into the back of the bag. You then want to create the shape of the front of the flap. I'll give you the sizes the way that I've created mine, but you can change up the look of the flap as you so wish, depending on the style or the look of the bag you want to create. So if I have my piece in and work along the short side first, I've lined my ruler up with the 1.5 inch mark across the top. So my left hand side of my ruler is lined up with the score line, and I drew a pencil line between 1 inches and 2 inches and 4 inches and 5 inches. I've then moved my ruler along, and I've drawn between the top of the cardstock down to 1 inch and 5 inches down to the bottom of the cardstock. So that's given me this line here, this line here and this line here. Rotate the piece to the long side and then we're basically going to join up the lines. So I've used my ruler to join this point here and this point here, and at this centre section here I've drawn from the end of the line to the base of the cardstock. So that's giving me the start of the shaped flap. I've then added in my marker for my slot, and that's going to be in the middle, so it's 3 inches across, and I've chosen to have mine 3/4 of an inch, but I wanted to make sure there was an element of space underneath the slot before I got to the end of the flap. So I've marked mine from 1 3/8 of an inch down to 2 1/8 of an inch, and that is what I will cut for the slot on the bag. So to prepare the flap, I'm going to cut a wedge from the end of the 1/2 inch glue tabs like so. As I did with the front flap, I'm not going to have any pattern paper on this. What you might want to do if you want the pattern paper is start with a piece which is 2 inches by 6 inches, so it's the same size as that. Create the measurements as we did so that your pattern paper is exactly the same size, and then go around and on each of the sections cut away 1/8 of an inch, and then you'll have your 1/8 of an inch border all the way round, and your pattern paper should sit on the front of the flap. So I am going to start by cutting this like so. I'm going to just shape it slightly just to take away the square edge with my scissors. I'm going to cut these off square to start with, because I'm going to try and use my corner punch to round off these outer corners. So the inner corners I'm just doing by eye, using my scissors, and as I would do with fussy cutting, I'm moving the paper or the cardstock rather than my scissors. That's how the 2 internal sections will look. Just take my corner die and round off the outer edges. And now I'm going to bring in my craft knife and ruler and cut my slot, and I want a slot rather than a slit, so I'm going to cut slightly to the left of the pencil line and then slightly to the right, and then just join up the ends. So that is going to be the front of the flap. Let's get rid of all the pencil marks on the back. So I'm quite happy with that. Let's start putting all the pieces together. So this is our bag element. I'm going to just fold and burnish now that this is completely dry. I can start by adding in the sides. So we will add glue onto all of the glue tabs around the side section, and then that is going to sit in and around the bag like so. If you've chosen to have a curved base here, you might want to add a curve into the sides of your bag, because that will help get the shape into place. So choose your adhesive. I will use construction glue, which will take slightly longer to dry, but it will give me the strength for my bag. And that is going to sit in there like this. And obviously you don't need to make the bag the same size as this. You can change up the main base element, but proportionately the style of the bag that this was originally based on is longer that way than it is tall and wide, as it were. So that's all come together nicely, and then we'll do the remaining glue tabs. So the next thing I'm going to do is run glue along the back of the glue tab here, and then that is going to sit in the back of the bag like so. Make sure your score line sits just slightly above the bag. You want the flap to be able to come back towards the back of the bag so it's easy to get into, and then I can just burnish that down. So that's sitting nicely on the back. So whilst that's completely drying, we can get on with the handles and any additional embellishments. I've now added on the handles and finished the embellishments. The handles are 8.5 inches long, and I've cut them to 3/4 of an inch wide so they fit nicely in the gap in between the two sections here. I've added 2 strips of cardstock together to make each handle. I have scored 1/2 inch from the end at either end, so you can then pull the handle forward to get the lid flap open. I positioned the front one on first and then used the top of the handle to help me line the back one into place. In terms of the closure system, I've added a surround. This is a 1-inch circle disc. I was able to lay the bag over and position the disc on the front and mark where the slot would be, cut the slot and then add that onto the front. And then for the closure, after a couple of attempts to get something which would actually sit correctly, I've had a strip which was just under 2 inches long. I've scored to create a 1/8 of an inch centre section and then scored 1/8 of an inch either side so that the clasp sits in this butterfly type fashion when it's on the front, and that can then slot through and these can push back to hold the flap in place. Here's the initial bag that was made and here's the new one. So here we have the final project for 2025. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish those of you who celebrate a happy festive season, a happy holiday season. Thank you to those of you who've subscribed throughout the year and who continue to watch the videos. Give me a thumbs up and comment, it is always appreciated. Hopefully you've enjoyed the projects this year and you will continue to support me going forward. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and I look forward to seeing you in 2026.